And first of all, excuse my accent, as I just said. I don't say cheers, I say Prost, because I'm from Austria. I actually enjoy the fact that we have beer here. I see 1, 2, 3 people at least. I also enjoy we call it a cold tea at home. Right? It's a cold tea with from hops. I also just came in from Europe, which means my body time is midnight. So I hope I don't fall asleep. I don't think so, because it's a topic that I'm very passionate about. It's quality, it's performance. It's more quality than performance today, but I think you will see how I kind of merge these two things together. 16 years ago, I started with a company called Segue Software. I'm not sure if anybody knows the software. It's not the Segways, but it's Segue was building testing tools. I actually started as a tester on Self-Performer, which is a load testing tool. I did this for 1 year, then I became a developer, then an architect, and then after a while my boss back then told me, well, there are people that are better in development. He was very diplomatic. He said, there's people that are better in coding. You should help people use our software and break apps. Right? And we basically did a lot of load testing. I remember my first engagement with the German unemployment office. Back then they had a big change in regulation. And so they had a new software coming out, and they were supposed to run the software with 100,000 concurrent users. So I went to Germany. It was my first kind of gig abroad. And after 15 minutes, the whole thing was over. Why? Because we ran a load test, and instead of simulating 100,000 users, we broke the app with five users. And that was kind of obviously embarrassing for them. It was an interesting lesson learned for me. And what I also learned is that we don't necessarily need a lot of large-scale load and performance testing tools, and need to run these tests in order to actually find these problems. I know most of you are doing Selenium SOAP UI tests, so most of you are probably doing functional tests and automation tests. What I want to show you today, and I think this is also why I talk about DevOps, is I think we all need to level up. Leveling up means you as a tester, you should not feel comfortable in your seat when you know how to write a Selenium script. Because guess what? You talked about this, like how do you pick up Selenium? There's YouTube tutorials, and everybody can learn Selenium. And the next college kid can learn Selenium. And there's a lot of people around the world that can learn Selenium, and they might be able to do it much cheaper than you. Therefore, what I want to tell you today is, I think, a necessary step for all of you to level up and do more with the existing testing that you already do by looking at additional things, performance metrics and architectural metrics, and hopefully you do it end-to-end. Meaning you're educating your developers to look at these things before they check in stupid code that will break the app later on. You can actually already remind them that the stuff that you just changed might become a problem later on. You want to automate the whole thing in your CI. And you want to also educate your folks that run the software in production to also look at certain metrics. Okay, so I think DevOps means, and actually I also put the T in there, because I'm actually very unhappy that DevOps, the term, was coined without the key binding element in the middle, which is quality, which is testing. Right? You are the quality gate between Dev and Ops. So we all need to level up, I believe. And one thing, I know it's hard to see maybe, but we don't log bugs, we fix them. This was one interesting comment I heard last year when I was traveling the world, and I was not only speaking at conferences, but also could listen to people that were telling their story. Not sure if anybody read my blogs where I quoted, where I presented or wrote down what I learned. Does anyone want to take a guess who said this last year? I think the company was a US-based company. I don't know. Do you maybe in your company do it like this? You don't log bugs, you just fix them? So the guy who said this was Adam Auerbach from Capital One. I guess I don't need to explain who Capital One is, right? We all know this. Adam Auerbach spoke last year at Velocity, which is one of the largest conferences when it comes to building resilient systems at scale. That's what their slogan is now. They used to be a web performance conference, then they moved into DevOps, and now they call it Building Resilient Systems at Scale. He also talked at Star West, which is a testing conference. Well, what's interesting about his story, 3 years ago, Capital One had 8 test teams. And he was one of the 8 leads of these test teams. It was 3 years ago. Then they moved from waterfall to agile. Now he's the only one left. There's no test teams anymore. He's doing mentoring. He's mentoring the development teams that now also include the testing role. That's why I asked you guys when we were standing over there with the beers, who of you is actually doing traditional testing where you are a testing team and you get stuff thrown over the wall, or are you already part of the development team? And I think that's the key thing, because I want to play a role game with you now. Okay? So this is my hotel card, obviously, so don't take it later, but I will give it to you. So if we two work for a company like Capital One, or a company that is doing agile the real way, and you are the developer, because you know better, you do better coding, and I'm the tester, so we are the same team. At the beginning of the sprint, everybody knows what a sprint is, I guess, right? Yeah. At the beginning of the sprint, we two commit that we are going to finish this story. Okay? At the beginning of the sprint, I guess you take the card, right? You take the story on the board, and what do you do as a developer?
I begin coding all the parts.
Perfect. Yeah. So you begin coding, right?
Yeah.
What do you do when you're done?
Check it in. For testing. You get testing.
Exactly. So you check it in and you say, Andy, I'm done coding. You, hopefully I sit in the same room, maybe I sit next to you, right? Who said you sit next to developers, right? So hopefully we sit next to each other, and then you can say, Andy, I just checked in code, and I can say, awesome. I check out the code on my machine, I run my tests, and guess what? If I find problems, I don't make him happy because he's our boss.
Yeah. You're fired.
No. So the thing is, I don't go to Jira or any other ticketing system to create 5 bugs. I'm just telling you and say, look at this, I found this and this and this problem. I'm actually using similar tools what you are using, so we can actually speak the same language. And then the two of us play this game back and forth until both of us say, this feature is functional correct, and from a quality perspective, I'm also good. I don't need to make you happy to show how many bugs I found. He doesn't make you happy either to show how many lines of code he coded. What you do is you trust the two of us that the stuff that we produce and give back has the right quality and is feature complete. That's part of DevOps. That's trusting people and getting people together, right? That's what it is. Of course, we will have a ticketing system later on because unfortunately we are not perfect, so there will be some bugs that will slip through. There will be some bugs you put in that I didn't find, so we'll have a ticketing system later on. But this is something that Adam, and he wrote a blog about it, he spoke about at a conference. It's really, really amazing what they did. But basically what it is, it's nothing else than that we've learned over the years what agile development is all about. And I think DevOps is just taking, bless you, or Gesundheit as we say. DevOps is nothing else than taking the great principles of agile development, getting people together, feeling responsible for the same thing and passionate about it, and basically expanding that beyond the boundaries of engineering team, starting in product management and business and going all the way into ops. So great story to read up on. Also, in case you are interested in DevOps, I'm sure you have come across some literature like continuous delivery. For me, continuous delivery is the technical vehicle to fulfill the promise of DevOps. Because DevOps basically, and that was kind of the first definition I had on DevOps when I was on stage 2 years ago, was DevOps is what we did when we were a startup. So when we two find a startup, that means the two of us sit in a room, we have the idea, we code it, we test it, we run it, and if it has a problem, we fix it. Right? DevOps tries to scale that, what works in a small company, into a big enterprise. And that means trusting people that they have the right ideas and that they do their work correctly to the best intentions of the company's benefit.
I just have a question on this concept of pairing each other. It comes from the extreme programming, like where you pair each other and then make sure that the whatever that we got. So it's gotten into the DevOps culture, right?
Definitely.
That's where the origin is.
Definitely, and I'll give you some examples. So when we two work in a team, if you are picking up the next cool framework from GitHub because you found this AngularJS, you found this new cool library, then you tell me as tester, you say, Andy, I found this library, I'm going to use it, so maybe Andy, you can already do some research on how to best test it. On the other side, I have a lot of testing experience. That means I can teach you about the things that I always find, so to make you a better programmer, because you should not make the same mistake all over again that I found last year in your code and the 5 years before in his code. That's sharing know-how and knowledge and leveling up everybody else. The next step will be who is doing daily stand-ups in their organization? That's all? 3 hands for it? Okay. Who is in the daily stand-ups? Just developers and testers? Anybody else?
Project team leads,
Okay.
DevOps engineers.
Okay. Anybody from the network side? Anybody from database side? Anybody from operations?
It's a little different for us because we have infrastructure as a service, but
Okay.
yeah.
So the reason why I mentioned this, I mean, obviously it depends on what type of organization you are and which infrastructure you run. But if in the daily stand-up, if we two make a code change, you make the code change and I say this is good because I tested it. And if we can then tell the DBA, this guy over there, we are now executing a little more database queries for this feature, then he can say, are you sure? Because if you do this, and this is the number one primary feature, which is used by 80% of our users, that means it's going to cause a lot of extra traffic on my database servers. Are you sure you want to do this? That's why we should have these people in the, maybe not in every daily stand-up, but at least in the sprint reviews. You want to have all the different people from dev, test, to ops in a row. Because you got a lot of new ideas. Like you could say, guys, look at this. I mean, you're the database expert, right? You can give us some feedback on what things you've seen in the past so that we don't make the mistake and kill the database server yet again. So definitely sitting, so you're coming back to your question, yes. Pair programming or sitting together, talking with people, it's an amazing concept. Communicating. So, yeah, obviously, sarcasm doesn't work right now. So Continuous Delivery is a great book that you should all read because I think it's a technical vehicle of actually getting code change faster through the pipeline. If you don't know what a pipeline is, if you don't know what a build pipeline is, please read up on this. You will hear terms like Jenkins, Bamboo, TeamCity, Go. There's a lot of Team Foundation servers. These are all build servers that allow to put the code change that you commit through a pipeline until at the end a package drops out that we can potentially deploy in production. Oops. Also, another great read. Has anybody heard or read the book, The Phoenix Project? 1? Anybody else? 2? What do you say about it? Be honest. You can say bullshit. Then I'm not offended. I have it on there because I like it, but you can tell me you have a different opinion.
I mean, I'm still pretty new, so the whole concept is still pretty interesting. How the manager going around and learn the stuff.
So basically, what this book is about, it's not technical. It's a novel. It's a novel about a company that faced a challenge that they were basically disrupted by other companies, by the competition, and they had to change the way they're doing things. And it's a lot of common sense that is in there. I mean, if you read the book and you're like, of course, this is clear. But then if you think about it, you do the same thing in your organization. You have this one guy that is constantly the bottleneck because he's been with the company for a long, long time. Everything runs over him. Every single technical problem, it's his. What's his name again? Brian? No, I don't remember. But a great book that I can recommend everybody to read, The Phoenix Project. So DevOps has been around for a while. I think these books have been around for a while, and I think the reason why we hear all of this, why we have all these books and these stories, is because of these mythical creatures, the unicorns. Right? And obviously not the unicorns itself, but the companies, the Googles, the Etsy's, the Facebooks, and the Twitters, and the Ubers, and the Airbnbs in the world. What do these companies do differently? These companies went on stage a couple of years ago already and said, well, we are not deploying a new version once a year. We're deploying 700 times a year, 10 times a day, 60 times a day. And Amazon actually said, they went on stage 4 years ago at Velocity and said, we are deploying a change into production every 11.6 seconds. I know, come on. Who needs that, right?
Also, these numbers seem really high too, so I could just cite like another statistic. I work for Okta, which is an identity platform, and we deploy 40 times a year. And that's like a lot lower in numbers, it's not in triple digits, but it's not just the number, it's just, you know, the commitment. So we deploy literally like once a week. We do it like clockwork, and it doesn't bring the system down. We've actually designed the deployment so it doesn't impact any customers, it doesn't bring the system down. And so that's important too, right? So if you have a favorite metric, you know, there's a great video on this, I blog about this. It's called like the Kung Fu of the Chef CEO, essentially. I think maybe that might be something that would be good. Maybe you commit to something and you make it happen. That's even more important. Yeah.
So, I mean, actually 40 times a year is already pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Who is doing more than 40 deployments per year?
Wasn't in church something like 8 times a day? Dynatrace helped them do that. It's
Yeah, I mean,
ridiculous, 8 builds a day
Well,
or something.
these guys are deploying every
That's like-
11.6 seconds, right? So, what I'm saying is, you have already an impressive number. And by the way, and I think this is what people get wrong. And thanks for pointing and for raising the hand. This does not mean that Amazon.com changes significantly if you open up the browser and in 11.6 seconds refresh it, and you're expecting a different version. No. What we are talking here are small deployment changes. It means it could be that they are deploying 5 new virtual machines because they know the new iPhone is coming out, and they need to have these 5 new virtual machines, additional virtual machines to cover the load. It could be yesterday when we too deployed a new feature, and the feature unfortunately has a problem on Internet Explorer users because of a buggy JavaScript library. Because we've automated the whole process of getting a code change through the pipeline, we can fix the problem, and we know when we click on the button, 10 minutes later, it's actually deployed in production because we are able to deploy small changes into production and not big bang releases. This obviously doesn't work for every piece of software that is out there. We have a lot of applications that are very monolithic, that are very big. You cannot deploy a big application every 11.6 seconds. The architecture needs to be right. That's also why the concept of microservices or breaking the app into smaller pieces, into modules is so popular, because if you have smaller pieces and you can replace every single piece individually, then you're much more flexible, because the single change is easier to do, easier to roll back, and has less impact. Nevertheless, great stories. I think we can learn a lot from them. Please do me the favor, if you don't do it already, all of these companies, and the list goes on, they all have blogs. The development and testing teams have blogs on how they actually engineer their code, how they do test automation, how they do continuous integration, continuous deployment. It's amazing what they do. But don't make the mistake, please, to just copy everything they do, because you are not an Etsy, you are not a Facebook. But it's great to hear what they do, and certain things applied to your organization make a lot of sense. So the reason why I say don't blindly copy it is because there are companies obviously that want to deploy more frequently because they feel we have to be faster than our competition. And I have the first example, and I know this is hard to read, so now this is, those people didn't come to the front, but I'll explain what it is. The first example was from an online casino. So this guy came to me because he was reading some of my blogs that I did 2 years ago on web performance optimization. So I was a big tester and advocate for analyzing websites, why they're slow, and there were a lot of blogs about it. And this guy comes to me and he says, "Hey Andy, I am the operator of this casino. It's called knockoutcasino.com, so you can go online. It's a real thing." And he said, "Right now, I'm getting a new build from my development and testing team." So the testing team actually signs it off. I get one build every last Friday of the month. And I deploy it, and it typically crashes badly. And then it's Friday evening, and nobody from the engineering team is there anymore. So I need to do firefighting until Monday morning, until the engineers are back and can help me to fix it. And he said, "My managers read about this DevOps thing. What that means for them is we want to deploy once per week. So I'm getting a new build every Friday afternoon." And he fears that all of his weekends are gone. Right? Not fun. Is anybody on call of you? I know most of you are in the, but who is on call if something goes bad? Yeah, one, couple people, yeah. It's not fun, right? If you waste all your weekends because you should spend it with your family. So what I did, I looked at the performance metrics, or I call them actually architectural metrics because it's not performance. You said Selenium, right? And you said you're only doing functional tests. I want to tell you that if you run a Selenium script or whatever tool you use, you can actually hook it up with tools that are either built in your browser or tools that extend your browser and can capture metrics like this. When I see, or when you see, when you test your website, that you force your users to download almost 10 megabytes, 282 images, taking 9 seconds to load, and all of the images are coming from a single server, then you, even though you're not yet an expert in this, these are some basics in web performance optimization. This is your level up. If you do your functional tests, even if your functional test goes green because the website looks good and the OK button does what it should do, you should scream and say, I don't think this is good. In the daily stand-up, you should say, hey, what's your name? Hilton. You can say to Hilton, I don't believe we should have 282 images on that landing page because I read and I heard from Andy that this is not a good thing. And then you can say, probably you're right, I just made a mistake. I forgot to actually follow some of the best practices that have been out there for so many years, and I forgot to merge the images into sprites. Or distribute them across multiple servers, because one thing, if you are doing anything with web applications, if you're doing any web testing, I think you should make yourself familiar with the concept of web performance optimization and the basics. The basic thing is to actually understand what happens when the browser opens up a web page. The browser can only, right now, download 4, 6, or 8 images or resources in parallel. That's also why if you have 282 images on the page, it takes a long, long time to download all of them because the browser cannot download them in parallel. Things will change with HTTP 2.0, which we are facing soon. So things will change again a little bit. It will be better, but still, this is something you need to look out for. Okay? So these key metrics for me are metrics that every tester needs to look into and raise their hand. This is not good. Okay? And the cool thing is, who has an index finger? Everybody, right? You can press F12 in your Chrome, in your Firefox, even in Internet Explorer, and a little toolbar comes up on the bottom, and if you then load the page, on the very bottom in the status bar, you will see exactly these metrics. And if you automate it through Selenium, you can actually also automatically let these tools spit out these metrics for you at the end of your test. Because obviously, DevOps also preaches automation. So you don't do it manually every time because it's boring. To complete that story, this on its own is already not good. What you see down here is what's called a waterfall diagram, basically showing from entering the URL what the browser is doing until the page is fully loaded, the different domains. Who has heard about a CDN, the Content Delivery Network? I think it's a concept that people know about, right? A CDN, like Akamai or Amazon, they provide it. These are services where you can put static content, typically images, JavaScript files, on different servers around the world that are managed and run by Akamai, with the promise that if I'm in Austria, for instance, at home, and I load your page and your servers are actually here in the States, I'll get a copy from this image that is probably in Austria, because Akamai has servers there. That's a great concept. However, in their case, what they did, the developers going DevOpsy, getting more power and actually having the power to decide which CDNs they want to put on the system, on the website, they decided to use the cheapest one they could find. Unfortunately, the cheapest one is not always the one that is actually the cheapest one. Right? It might be free, but it's not cheap. So they put a 20 kilobyte CSS file, a style sheet file on a CDN to boost performance because they read about this cool thing, using a CDN. Unfortunately, as I said before, this CDN didn't have any servers in their target market. The target market was North America. The servers were in Asia. So in order for me to download this 20 kilobyte CSS file, I had to spend 1.8 seconds alone to get a physical connection to that server to download 20 kilobytes of data. This doesn't make sense. And this is also something you can look into. I know this might seem out of your league right now because you never thought about what's happening in the browser, but you should. Because again, guess what? If you don't do it, the next college kid, the next guy from somewhere around the world who is signing up for some crowd testing service can do this stuff much better and cheaper than you. Okay. So, metrics. Look at these metrics. So, I'm coming back to DevOps, and one of the promises and also what the promises of DevOps and continuous delivery is delivering changes faster, right? This is the whole promise. Delivering faster, software faster to the end user. The challenge is, if you deploy faster, right? If you have the fastest car, if you have a kube automated pipeline, you want to make sure you're not failing faster. Right? And unfortunately, failures happen, and there are actually also many public examples. This happened last year at United, and I think actually today in the morning, besides obviously the tragic news we heard from Europe, there was also news from Japan where SAN, or whatever the airline is called, ESN, they had to ground, I think, 200 flights, a total of 10,000 passengers stranded because of a software glitch. Okay, obviously, software deployments that even though they made it hopefully to good Q&A sometimes fail. Or, another example. That's DevOps. It's not a screw top, but if you it's not a screw top.
Kitchen.
But if you can screw it open, I'm very impressed. Don't destroy your key. Any other DevOps guy in the room that can help? We have 3 engineers now. One is waiting for the beer, one is struggling with the beer, one has the solution in the pocket probably. Almost there?
All documented in the meeting.
He's got it. Oh, we got it, thank you. That's right, I'll get myself. Okay, here we go. Awesome.
Build is ready for deployment.
So there's another example, and I know I always make jokes about it, especially when I'm in the US. We have this thing called football because we play with the foot and not with the hand.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So this was the FIFA World Cup. I'm sure you remember that 2 years ago, the last World Cup in Brazil. 2 weeks before the World Cup, the official FIFA app on Android crashed for 80% of the users when they opened up the app and refreshed the first screen, which was basically then loading the latest news entries. 80% of the people crashed the app. It's amazing. Why? Because it went through amazing testing, but when you test the app, months before the World Cup, you have a sample set of news entries, maybe 5, maybe 10. 2 weeks before the World Cup, the news entries come in, 50, 100, 500 news entries. And unfortunately, the library that the developers use to display the news entries had a memory leak. So every time they refreshed the screen, people with Androids that didn't have enough memory, which crashed the system, crashed the app. Unfortunately, FIFA has stopped. So fortunately, they fixed it, but this was an interesting story. And I think it's a very public example that we also as testers should not just test with test data. We need to think ahead and think, hey, we are testing this app and there's going to be hundreds of news entries. Why don't we only test with 10 entries, right? I mean, test data, I'm sure you've had a lot of discussions already about test data. Correct, accurate, real-life test data is very critical. And thinking ahead, what's coming up next, how much data is coming in. So all of these examples are also backed by some statistics that we have a lot of crappy software out there. 80% of engineering time in the United States, and I'm sure it's true worldwide, but 80% of engineering time in 2014 was spent in bug fixing and maintaining code. 80%. That only leaves 20% for innovation. And even more critical, that in 2014, bad software had a business impact of $60 billion, meaning faulty software was responsible for $60 billion in additional costs for running software, for fixing it. Remember some of the public disasters that happened a couple of years ago? I guess we all remember an already beaten horse, but healthcare.gov obviously, or if Amazon goes down for a minute, they lose millions. I guess I don't need to remember you there. Why? Because I think we all focus on quality too late, even though we're all quality engineers here, and we would like to not to actually find every single bug, but sometimes we just don't get enough time, right? Because we have to deploy, because we promised to deploy this software next week, but we just start testing today, and actually we should have started a week ago. What's the status? How can we get out of this? So I think we are, if we keep doing this, and if we allow our managers. By the way, who is a manager in here? Are there any managers? Yeah. Okay. So you listen. If we allow managers to just read these books, no, don't turn around. It's you. It's you. If we allow people like you to just read these cool stories from Amazon and say, now we're deploying more frequently, and who cares about testing? We do it like Facebook. We don't test. We just deploy our features to 0.01% of the users, and they figure it out. And if they don't complain, then we roll it out to the next 0.01%. That only works for Facebook because they have so many, they have 1 billion users. It doesn't work for most of you. That's why testing is important. We need to get better in it. So how can we get better in it? Last year alone, so I have an offering, a free service. People that use our software, Dynatrace, you can actually download it for free with a free version, and actually it stays free for developers and testers for life. It's called the personal license. And part of the offering, I also offer people sending me data, and I analyze the data and I send it back to them. Because I use our tool every day, and what I find in 5 minutes probably takes you half a day. The cool thing with this is I get a lot of stories. You get the benefit of getting a free analysis, but I also get these stories that I can share with you. Last year alone, I did 200 applications that I analyzed. 200 people sent me data. 80% of the apps that suffer problems only had a very small number of problem patterns. It was always the same problems. And I was frustrated with it. Because why do I find always the same problems? Look, like if we work in a development team and every week I show you the same freaking problem. It should not happen. Okay? I know.
You're fired again.
Everybody's mad.
Yeah. So, but on the other side, this is an encouraging number, because if I can take these examples and teach it to you, how you can level up your testing and find these problems, then you can contribute much more to your DevOps team, or whatever you want to call it. And you can build much better software, and you have less problems that actually make it into production. So, how do we get there? I love learning from others. I already showed you one example with the online casino, and now I'm showing you another one, which I believe is going to probably impact a lot of you soon, if it doesn't already impact you. Okay? Microservices. Actually, it's not a new term. We just called it services a couple of years ago, and probably back then we called it components. Now we call it microservices. Who's heard about the term? Who has software that has a microservice architecture? Yeah. Who has a monolith and they're trying to break it apart into services? Yeah. Which company are you working for?
Marriott?
Marriott.
Bonus points.
Bonus points.
No, don't
So-
inspect our website.
Platinum.
But I like the service, and I stay with your hotel a lot. So, microservice everywhere. Here's my tip. There's no migration to microservices. So if you have a migration project, you're using the wrong term, because there's no migration. At least not one without a lot of potholes on the way. This is an example of a Swedish company, and this Swedish company, they started I think 10 years ago, and these guys, probably like the two of us, we had an idea. We were in Sweden and we said, you know what's missing? When we have kids and we want to send them to a football club, because they should learn to play Well, we want a website where we can actually find the football clubs so that we can contact them and send the kids to it. There was nothing like that. So they basically built that website where every sports club in Sweden could register. And if you're moving to Sweden and you want to send your kids to a football club, what do? You go to the website and search for football clubs in Stockholm. Take a guess how many football clubs there are in Stockholm.
100?
Just give a number. I would say between 32 and 34.
33.
33, got a winner. So there's 33 football clubs in Stockholm. The reason why I mentioned this number because it's important for the example. Okay? So, what you see here is what we call in Dynatrace terms, and I'm sure other tools out there that can do similar things, because what we do is tracing. So we trace calls end-to-end of the applications. We see it in your apps. We do it as Dynatrace. There are other tools like New Relic, App Dynamics, Wiley. There's many other tools out there in the space. The space is called APM, Application Performance Management. You install a little agent on your applications, and then the magic happens, and everything you do in your app will be traced end-to-end. These guys, 10 years ago, never thought that this is going to be a big hit, but last year, guess what? They went global. That means not only Stockholm or not only Sweden, but worldwide. And they saw their response time of their key feature of the search to go up from 0.5 seconds to 1 second, 1.52 seconds, until in the summer it reached 2.6 seconds. And they said if this curve goes on like this, and we are yet about to expand into new territories, nobody's going to use our service anymore because it's crappy, it's slow. Then they came to the two of us and said, fix it. And then we said, well, guess what? Right now, if I look at the production environment, we already max out the CPU and it's a monolithic app, so we cannot scale it by throwing more hardware on it. I mean, we can throw more hardware on it, but at some point in time, there's no bigger box that we can buy. That's why people actually say, we go into microservices. So what they basically did, they ripped the thing apart into a front end and a back end. And the idea was that they can use the front end and actually deploy it on different Amazon EC2 regions because they're going global, putting it as close as possible to the end consumer. And the search service in the back, they stays in the data center in Stockholm, close to the database, and they were supposed to basically use Docker and other virtualization technologies to scale it up and down as they need. That's what they did. Then they deployed it, and unfortunately, when they deployed it, they saw some very strange numbers. After the deployment, the search for the football clubs in Stockholm, how many come back? How many results? 33. 33 come back, and we took this on the peak load after the day they deployed it. It took 26 seconds to load. 5 kilobytes of payload, that's the first additional metric that I look at when I'm actually doing even a functional test because I want to know how much data is actually really coming back. 5 kilobytes for me is not that big. It's not a problem because 33 search results, 5 kilobytes is good. But what this transaction flow also tells me as a tester, if I know I'm executing a search, front-end, back-end database, and this is supposed to be hosted in EC2, which should only do rendering, then why do we have a direct call to the back-end database? Because what the engineering team, what we told them, what you told me, you were extracting out that key business code and put it into a back-end service so that the front-end is only doing stupid rendering. But it seems we still have code in there, and we looked at this. This code that was still in here was making a database query. Give me back all the primary keys, give me back all the individual primary keys from the database of the search results. And then for the 33, for everyone, you're now making a microservice call. So this is a classical data-driven problem that you have. Because if you have one search result, one call, 33 calls, 1,000 results, 1,000 calls. That's not going to scale.
The latency is going to kill you.
The latency is going to kill you. Every call responds 3 kilobytes. So a total in this search query 99, they were condensed down to 5 kilobytes. This doesn't make sense. And in total, in the back, they had 171 database queries being executed for showing me the football clubs in Stockholm. Okay. And here's the thing. even though in testing the search returned the exact number of search results and it looked exactly the same as before, if I would be responsible for functional testing, and if I would look at this, then I would never allow this build to go into production. Or at least I would raise the hand and say, I tested the search with 2 different search queries, with 2 different search results, and I see that this is a data-driven problem because we have a communication pattern going on here. And also here, this is very strange. Why do we execute 170 database queries for a search that executes 33 line items? This is also the level up that you need to do, okay? I believe it's in your responsibility, and it should also be in your interest that you as testers look at these metrics. So what they did to fix the whole thing, they really fixed it by defining nice service boundaries. So the backend service is now providing one nice call that says, give me all the search results. So now they are down to 2.5 seconds instead of 26. They respond 5 kilobytes, which can be taken directly and put back out, and only three SQL queries. Okay? So this is the right thing to do it. Make sense? So I'm a big fan of metrics. That's why I tell you, if you're doing your functional testing, look at, if you remember the online casino from before, the example, the number of images, the number of JavaScript files, the size. If you're looking at server-side metrics, the number of service calls, the number of containers, the number of threads. I know these are all metrics that might look totally unfamiliar to you. But there's tools out there, and I named it, Dynatrace, AppDynamics, New Relic, profiling tools. Go and speak with your developers. Actually, don't bring necessarily in a new tool. Talk with your developers. Maybe they already use a tool. Talk with your performance team. Maybe they already use a tool, and then use that tool. Because DevOps also says, let's use the same tools, because then we speak the same language. Because you trust the tool that you're using every day. If I don't yet use a tool, I'll just use your tool to teach me. Okay? And we don't have to fight about which tool is right, which one is the better tool. Okay, so a lot of metrics. More metrics, by the way, the slides, I have them already up on my slide share, and I will post the link to the slides on the meetup page, so you don't need to take notes. Who is doing, no, I know you do mainly manual, I mean you're executing manual. Who is executing tests in an automated way, on a build-to-build basis? Nobody wants to raise their hand? Because you're too tired, or?
You're talking about build of a whole system on a sprint, because on a sprint you do tests.
On a sprint, okay.
We want to get there. That's the next.
Let me ask you the question. Who has Jenkins, Bamboo, or any other build server, and these build servers execute at least parts of your tests automatically on every build? Yeah? Kind of? Yeah, okay.
Certain project, that's what we do.
Certain project, yeah, perfect. So, because that's what we want to do. We want to get from doing things manual. I mean, I can stand here and every time when I test a page, hit F12 and look at the metrics, or I can automate the whole thing. And the automation is the key, because what we really want to build is a beautiful pipeline, right? It's a nice visualization of a pipeline where when we develop stuff, we don't put bad code in the pipeline, we only put good code in the pipeline, and in case something goes wrong, we kick the bad code out, and in the end, we got good stuff coming out. So what we really need, we need to build quality gates. And you are already a quality gate, because when you raise your hand, you are a manual quality gate. But you need to automate that, and you need to add additional metrics to your decision process. I just gave you 5, 6, 7 metrics before. I call them application metrics, or actually they are taken from within the application, but actually what they are architectural metrics. Like I'm calling 33 web service calls. Doesn't make sense. Architectural metrics, and bad architectural metrics later on tells me also that this application will never be able to scale and perform well. So, here's the good news. I'm sure you've seen the iceberg. This is your app, and what you're doing right now, you're scratching the surface, because you have your Selenium tests and your SOAP UI tests, and what you basically do, you verify functionality. You say, if I execute the search, do I get the 33 results back? What I tell you, look beyond the surface and look at exactly these metrics. The number of web service calls. We talked about JMS messages before. The number of JMS messages that end up in the queue. The objects allocated on the heap. The exceptions, the log messages. How many log messages do we create? Even though we have Splunk and Elk. But what if 90% of that log message actually doesn't make sense, right? So, when you execute the tests, hook these tests up with these tools that can also get you these metrics while you execute the tests. The cool thing is there's nothing you need to do because these tools have been optimized to just do everything automatically for you. The only thing you need to do is you need to install these, they are agent-based products. You need to install the library on that machine and then these metrics will automatically be captured. And if you do this, something magical will happen. Okay? And I want to show you quickly how this can look like in a pipeline. Now this is a very simplified pipeline, I know that. But knowing that most of you don't even have a pipeline, I guess it's already sophisticated. Sorry for the sarcasm, it was actually not sarcastic. So, I'm coming back to you again.
He's fired. He's not
No, he's not fired. No, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. So, we are working for this Swedish company when we were still a monolith. Remember? And you were responsible for the search feature and also for the news alert feature. The news alert is a feature where when you move to Stockholm and you don't find a football club, you can sign up your email and we will send you when something is new is coming in. Right? I wrote the tests, and the tests basically are green, functional green, like your SOAP UI and your Selenium tests. But what we also do, we hook it up with the tools that can tell us how many API calls, how many SQL statements, how much payload, how much CPU is consumed when we execute these tests. Because this is the first magic thing that happens. If we too have a sprint review with our architect, this guy over there, then he can say, guys, I think you did a good job. First of all, functional looks good, and 3 SQL calls, 5 kilobyte payload, that's all good. We can deploy this. Okay? You are the business guy. You had the idea about these features. So what you are actually interested in is how are these features actually working in production. So what you want to do is you want to know how many people actually use it. Usage. Do we have 10 people using it or 10%, 50, 60, 70, 80%? And if you see that the search, which is your key feature, you think 90% of people should use search, and only 63% are using it, and your goal is to hit at least 80, because you promised that to the shareholders, then you can say, Andy and Hilton, you need to fix this, because I think performance is a problem, because response time under peak load is 5.2 seconds, that's not good. And also what you tell us, news alert is only used by 0.5% of the users, that's nothing. Probably also because it's slow. So please, Hilton and Andy, go back and solve the problem, the technical problem. We obviously sit down with you as well, the architect. So we re-architecture everything, we do the performance fixes, and several builds later down the line, I execute the same functional tests. I didn't change anything because it's still the same functionality. And if I execute it against the new build, something magic happens again. Because now, by simply just executing my functional tests, looking at these metrics will tell you, wow, we're now executing 34 calls. The one that comes in the front, the 33 that go back and forth, we're executing 168 more SQL statements. So if we have a code review or a sprint review, and we also invite the database guy will say, are you crazy? If this is for real, I need to buy more Oracle servers. If we have the network guy in the room, he would say, are you crazy? The number one feature is now sending 20 times as many bytes over the wire. We need to totally rethink our network infrastructure. The guy who's responsible for the hardware thinks, are you crazy? Because you're consuming almost 3 times as much CPU as before. This is not going to work. And the cool thing is, we don't even need a performance test to figure this out. It's your functional tests. Okay? So based on this data, you, me, the database guy, the network guy, even you, the business guy, you say, no, we're not going to deploy this. Not a good build, even though it's functional correct. So that means we go back, fix everything, next build comes along, ooh, the numbers look much better now. 2 calls, the one that comes in the front, the one that goes to the back, database call, everything good, and then we say, good, up, we deploy. So now the search under heavy load actually runs on 5 instances because now it's the real service-oriented architecture with the scalable backend, so we can verify that this works. Your numbers are almost there, 75%, but guess what? Even though we improved the news alert feature, this had almost no impact on usage. It's the next magical thing we can do, which we do extremely bad in software engineering. Having the guts, the balls, to actually take things out. Because maybe you were wrong. Maybe the news alert feature is a feature that nobody needs. And by monitoring the usage in production, you can actually say, okay, didn't work out. That's also part of Agile, being iterative. Looking at metrics that tell us what's going on and then taking things out. Okay, so it looks nice on an Excel sheet, right? It actually also looks nice in the product. So this is what we built. And again, this I'm sure you can do it with other tools too, but this is how we implemented it. So if you put Dynatrace into your CI, into your continuous integration, that means you have your unit test, your Selenium test, your SOAP UI test, whatever tests you have, Dynatrace automatically identify these requests that come in, identify the test name. For every test, we look at these metrics, database count, number of times we call into Hibernate, execution time, CPU time, and then for every metric, we also figure out from build to build to build to build what this metric was in the history, like in the past. We baseline, and then if you make a code change from this build to this build and the number jumps up like crazy, we automatically raise the flag and say, not a good build. And we eliminate the need for you to look at these metrics manually for every single test you execute. We do it for you. So stop the bad builds in CI, but then also monitor, and I think this should also be something that you should be interested in as a tester. How does this code run in the real life? So this is now a dashboard from the same Swedish company where they are monitoring how many database statements are really executed by search in production, how many REST calls are executed, and how much payload is actually sent back and forth. Because maybe you built in a little Easter egg or like a little bug, and I didn't find it. If you look at the metrics in real life with real search keys, then we can look at these metrics as well and then figure out what's going on. Okay. So to recap for you, your homework list, your to-do list. Pick your metrics. Don't start with 50 metrics. Start with 1 or 2 or 3. My favorites, because I find them all the time, are the number of database statements. In the service-oriented architecture, the number of calls. Very, very interesting. Bytes sent and received, like how heavy are your features. There's many others that you could do. Figure out how you can monitor them. If you don't have a tool yet, first talk with your engineers. Maybe they already have a tool. If not, feel free to look at Dynatrace. If you sign up for Dynatrace, don't be scared because you get an email from me. Because I run the free trial program. That's how I also got to my 200 examples last year. Okay? Also remember, if you do web testing, it's built in your browser. Magic index finger, or use any finger you like, but F12. Then automate as much as possible. Right? Automation, I think automation is key to DevOps, to continuous delivery. Because guess what, if I drink 3 more beers today and I have to do some testing tomorrow, I'm not sure if my quality is good that I produce in my testing, but the CI tool, the test tools don't get drunk and hangover. And also monitor it in production. So that's also a key thing. Figure out, talk with your app folks and say, we are looking at these metrics in testing. How can we make sure to look at the same metrics in production as well? Because we want to know, how is the system really working? And I think if we do that, we can build better software faster, right? And you can become the next unicorn, hopefully, right? That will be the idea. So here are some links, and again, I will post them on the meetup page, but in case you wanna take them down, I have a SlideShare account. Dynatrace, you can get it here. I also have a YouTube channel. We talked about educational material. I have my own YouTube channel with tutorials on how I use Dynatrace on Java applications, .NET, PHP applications, how I identify database problems, how I integrate it into CI, how I identify web performance problems, and so on. And yeah, before, I wonder, what time is it?
In home.
It's 1 o'clock in the morning at home.
2 minutes too late.
Okay. So, if you don't mind, I would like to show you a quick demo, but only for those that are really interested. I don't want to force it on you, because I don't want to make this a product pitch, even though I obviously mentioned the product a lot. But before I do...
Not that you're wearing a shirt that says
I know. They don't, and the thing is, they don't even force me to do it. Actually helps me not to buy so many clothes already. Before I do it, any questions to what I presented so far?
I just have what your preference in terms of the testing tools various, the Jenkins and a lot of stuff in the market. And
so Jenkins is first of all not a testing tool.
I know I don't want you to, I don't know.
So what I can tell you what I see, okay? So what I see is that Jenkins is, I think, the number one when it comes to build servers, but I think it actually, people are, it depends on who you talk to. Obviously, when you talk to Microsoft technology folks, you will obviously see Team Foundation Server. If you see Java-based or anything else, it's typically Jenkins the first choice, even though I see a lot of people moving towards Bamboo as well. So it's a commercial product, and as great as Jenkins is, I think I'm not sure if there's as much, let's say, product power behind it as the Atlassian guys. I think they're doing a pretty good job. These are the same guys that build Jira and Confluence. From a testing tool perspective, I heard SoapUI, I heard Selenium, I hear them all the time. JMeter is a great testing tool as well, even though it has a very strange, crappy UI. But I guess if you are really automating it, you don't need the UI, because you write your tests and then you are executing them automatically. I think from a testing perspective, you can do a lot of stuff with free tools. However, in my background, I used to work for a testing company. I know that these tools obviously are worth its money, even though they might be very expensive. But I mean, we invested years and years of engineering power in building good tools that have great support, that do record replay, that make maintenance of scripts easier, that are easy to automate. So I think, as great as it is to have free tools, also have a look at the tools that actually cost some money, but they are typically worth it too.
So I have two big questions, and you don't have to answer these. These are two big ideas. So the DCast is actually running a Selenium workshop right now, and we're 3 sessions in. Everyone in the workshop can run functional tests.
Yep.
So the next thing that we're doing is we're elevating the running of those functional tests from someplace other than their laptop. And then once the group is able to do that, there are 2 questions they have to answer at work. And the first question they have to answer is how to connect functional tests to tools like this. Like you said, connect them. They have to answer that question. The second thing they have to answer is how do I connect the running of these tests? So most of these tests actually, if you talk to a lot of these guys, they're actually run separately. Like some orchestration tool like Jenkins will do the build and do the deployment, and then it's a disconnected process. Like it'll dump it on a server, and then the tests are run from like another service or another hosted platform on that build. So the next question they have to ask is, should they get connected? Should the Jenkins orchestration process actually connect the execution of those tests? And so it's not a question I can really answer, but I think moving forward, I'm going to talk to you about maybe how to structure more material around connecting those 2 dots. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So first of all, orchestration is a big thing, and actually with orchestration, actually talk about building a pipeline. That's basically what it is, building step by step and executing steps depending on the condition, on the quality gate. So you can do it with Jenkins. I also see people moving to more commercial products, like CBL Labs has a great orchestration tool. Then I was actually just at a meeting with Amazon today, and they are building their own orchestration platform.
It's like Cloud Ops or something.
Yeah, Cloud Ops, yeah. But you can Jenkins has a nice pipeline plugin that you can download, And then you can actually chain together Jenkins jobs depending on conditions. That's an option.
And it's also got a Dynatrace plugin?
Of course, it has a Dynatrace.
What's that question?
And there's a video on YouTube.
Sales pitch.
You had a question too.
I'm a big fan of Dynatrace. I used a few times. I'm performance tester.
Yeah.
Can you do comments about new performance to Kotlin? It's open source.
Yeah. If I can comment on it, no.
Okay.
I don't know it well enough to make a good statement. And before I make something up and pretend I know, I don't say. Yes,
I just learned 2 weeks ago.
yeah, yeah. No, I heard.
I looked into it.
I've heard about it. Some people talk about it. I've not used it. That's why it would be unfair for me to make a comment.
To my view, is probably a very good tool for the developer to test his functionality as he goes.
Correct. Yeah. But again,
Okay.
it would be unfair for me to say something.
I feel better now that I didn't know that tool.
Yeah. Okay, so now here's the thing. I need to switch the screen.
Oh, yeah,
Hopefully,
let's switch
let's
No,
see. I will
yeah.
try if this works. Okay, that you can still record. You need to let me know if you can still see my screen. Probably not, huh?
No.
Let
Yeah.
me do. I click on share my screen and let me know if you see now. Do you see it? Do you see
Yeah,
it?
I see what's on the TV.
Perfect. Okay, good. So, what do I have here? I have Dynatrace installed, and instead of explaining what Dynatrace is, not only do I have Dynatrace installed, I also have, from my perspective, the most sexiest sample application in the world.
Google.
Not Google.
Easy
Easy travel.
Some changes in this.
It's a great sample app.
Oh, it is.
So it's an app that runs on 2 Java Tomcats. It has 2 .NET components. It has an Apache in front that acts as a load balancer. It has 2 databases and a native component that is doing credit card checks. Okay? So it's 1, 2, 3, 6 components. I got this build from my development team. In order to get Dynatrace in, the only thing I had to do, I had to install what we call a Dynatrace agent, which is a single library. For Java, you need to adapt and change the command line string. When Java launches, you typically have a batch file that then you can specify additional parameters. For .NET, you have a little tool. You can select the process. Yes, come closer. And the same is true for Apache. So it's very simple to get it in there. No code change necessary. So what I have here is easy travel, and I lost my my developer. Where's he? Where's Hilton?
He had a problem.
He got fired.
He was on call.
He was on call, okay. So, I am now, I got this new build, and I'm a tester, right? So what I do, I run this in production because they deployed it in production, so I enter a search, LINC, that's my home city in Austria. And you can see when I type very slowly, LINC, the drop box popped up with different results. Looks good. Results are here. I click on links. I click on search. I get some search results. They also look pretty good, right? By the way, if you ever make it to Linz, good luck with finding the beach. At least the sandy beaches, but there's no sandy beaches. So I book it. I book now. And then I'm logging in with my test account, Monica. So I'm not schizophrenic, but I'm using Monica as my name. I click on login. Nothing happens. Yes, I click on. It seems nothing happens. So what would I do normally?
Leave the site.
Hit 12.
Hit F12 would be one option, right? Or I would go to Hilton, who's no longer here, and I say, this is all crap. It doesn't work anymore. Probably create a screenshot, create a bug report, and basically go on and do the next test case. Right? That's what I would normally do. Oh, look at that. Actually, after, it felt like a minute, actually something happened. But to be quite honest with you, in a real life scenario, probably this is something that we probably have lost this person, I would say, right? I would probably, huh?
Got Hilton.
Yep. They go to Hilton, exactly, yeah. Or they go to Marriott, of course.
That's why I came to Marriott.
So, who is doing testing in production? Is anybody then later on testing also in production because you didn't have enough time for testing before? No?
We just call it production. Like that's just production.
Just production.
Yeah. Customers are QA. We love our customers. Enlisted them into our QA team.
So what I have here, so my app obviously runs on my local machine. What I also run in the background is some load. I'm actually simulating different IP addresses. That's also why it seems that there's a lot of people from all around the world entering my system and using it from the US, from Europe, and different parts. We also categorize the user experience of people. Are people happy when they use it? Are they tolerating the experience, or they're frustrated? Like the experience that I just had was probably more frustrating because I didn't get to what I wanted to do. And if this runs in production, one thing that I would, like you're my business guy, right? And I guess what you will probably have in your environment, if you have Dynatrace, you probably have a dashboard that shows
User index.
that shows your Twitter feed to see, oh, Monica is complaining, and this person is complaining. This is the new reality we have to face. If we have software out there and people are not happy, they will probably complain, either on Facebook or on Twitter. So maybe you have a dashboard that says who is complaining about it, and what you also want to have on there is, well, is it only Monica that complains, or do we have a general problem around the world? Everything is red, or do we have a problem in the infrastructure? So this is something that you could put on a dashboard and then based on that make a sound decision. Okay, it seems we only have some small areas where people have problems, so maybe it's not a global epidemic. What I can do, however, and this is also interesting, I can look at all of the visits, we call them visits, so real users that came in. I can look at them and figure out how many of them that came in the last 24 hours. We had a total of 1,700 who are frustrated, tolerating, and satisfied. I can now do my analytics and figure out those people that are frustrated, why are they frustrated? Most of them seems to be frustrated because the last action, so the last thing they did on the page was not good, so it was either slow or failed. Failing could be like the crash we saw in the FIFA example. It could be a JavaScript problem or an HTTP error. And I can do more diagnostics. The reason why this is interesting, I know this might not be something for functional testers now because I'm looking at production data, but if you are DevOpsy, I think you should also have some interest in the real life data. What do people actually do out there? How do they, which browsers do they use? Oh, 62% IE. We don't test on IE right now. Oh, that's interesting. Or, you know, where do they come from? Which operating system do they have? What bandwidth do they have? This is great information you can suck in from your real life data. Now, let's see if we, what else can we do? I need to zoom out a little bit because it's getting a little small now. So, what Dynatrace also does pretty well, not only do I see the numbers, but I see every single individual user that is meeting that criteria, frustrated and coming from the web. This was my filter that I had before. I see operating system, IP. What I also see is, let's see where she is, Monica. I also see the username. So you can actually configure Dynatrace and say, hey, I want to capture the username when they log in. I capture an HTTP parameter. I'm capturing a certain method that is called in the backend. And then assign it to the visit, because if Monica complains and you see the Twitter feed, you can actually look her up. And then you can figure out what's wrong with her. Maybe you can also get your phone number. Who knows? So it seems Monica was frustrated. Why? Because the last action was frustrated. She's on the Windows 8.1, that's my machine, on 127.01, my IP address on Chrome. And here's now the magic. And this is obviously nice for diagnostics, but the real magic comes here when you can hand it over to your, he's no longer here, I could hand it over to Hilton, because I can click on opening client, and what happens now is, and now it pays off if you would actually be in the front, but you didn't listen to me at the beginning. So what you see here is now everything I did as Monica on that website. So I'm Monica, obviously, from using Chrome 49. I loaded the initial page. I entered L, I, and C. Remember, the drop-down box came up. I clicked on links. I clicked on search. I clicked on book now. I clicked on login. And login took really 28 seconds. And what I can do now, if Hilton would be here, I would actually say, I would share this data with him. So if this would be my test environment, either I invite him over, or if I'm not located with him, I can actually export the data. I can right-click export. That's also the way people send me data. I mentioned the 200 apps that I analyzed. People just capture the data, click on export, and then export it to a single file and send me that file. Because I can then import that file, and as I look at the same data, all of this is exported. And what's really cool, I can now right-click, drill down, and I know I'm doing this pretty fast because I've been using this product for so long. But the only thing, or the starting point that I would like you to understand is this here. You've seen this view before. So this is now the visualization of what is actually happening when I clicked on login. You read it from left to right, because here's the user, desktop browser. The desktop browser made 2 requests to Apache. Apache made 2 requests to the front end, 5 web service calls to the back end, 1,298 database calls. All right. This would already be something that would probably, if you are a DevOps tester, already say, you will probably say this is strange. It's not normal. And you can even do more. You can just move the mouse over this database icon here. In this case, it's a Derby database. It could be Oracle, it could be SQL Server, it could be DB2, it could be MySQL. And you can say, show me the database calls. And we actually show you every single database call. And I can see that this store procedure was called 757 times. This select statement was called 533 times. It's the classical n+1 query problem. It's a common problem pattern. The same statement being called multiple times. Instead of saying, database, give me exactly the data I need from Monica, I call it every time with a separate statement for the next line item. And it doesn't stop here, because I can say, well, really? So if Hilton would be here, he would probably ask, I don't believe you. Show me where the code that happens. So I can drill down to what we call the pure path. And the pure path is for me the magic technology, because the pure path shows me the truth. It shows me all the code that Hilton was actually coding, how it's executed, and where in his code he's actually calling these select statements, where he's calling web services, where he's allocating too much memory that is causing the application to crash, where he's writing 10,000 log statements that later on nobody needs. This is all there. And if you use the same tools as them and you capture this data, you will have a much better communication basis with your engineers. And you can find many more problems than before. Because the only thing you need, I think this is the way you should start. You should start by hooking up, and like you're learning in your workshops, hook up your application with Dynatrace and then start looking at these metrics. And you can start with them, we could start looking at them manually or with a REST API, and that's what we actually use for our integration, automation, for our integration with Bamboo and Jenkins. At the end of your test, you can say, Dynatrace, give me the data in an XML format or in JSON or in anything that I can then pull into Jenkins and make a decision on whether the build is good or not. Okay? And there's obviously much more that you can do with the product, but I think it's more than enough.
So this came from production, right? Something that, it's not caught in testing. So can we convert this use case into a test case?
Yeah.
Whatever that's happened in the visit side, user action side.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, I run the application on my local machine. So basically, this is my test case. This is my Monica use case. I click through it. This is the stuff that I execute on my browser.
Manually, right?
I did it manually, but for any tool like Dynatrace, it doesn't matter if there's somebody manually sitting there, or if somebody's driving the browser, or if some
Right, I'm
tool
just wondering if the set of actions that you perform can be converted into JMeter or SOAP UI test.
Oh, you mean directly from here?
Yes.
Not directly, because you have all the steps here, so you could look up Monica who complained, and you could easily then model the test because you have all the information.
Not necessarily the data, right? Data, what caused it to be a data-driven problem.
Yeah. What you would like is a right click and say create test script. That's what you would like.
Yes.
Yeah. Has been asked before, we've not done it yet. The data is all there, and the thing is you can query that data through REST, so you could probably easily write your own little script converter. Yeah.
I mean, something that's performed by the users, not necessarily test.
Yeah.
You know, what exactly they inputted, what they did.
Exactly, and this is all here. We have all the data from every single real user out there.
So just a note, we actually probably have like maybe 4 more minutes of recording time, and then we have to like close the presentation part of the session, and we can still take questions, and we just have to close the recording. So like at the end, we should any way you want to conclude, and then.
Yeah, what I want to conclude is I wrote. I want to point to two things. A year ago, I coined the term functional test revolution, because I think it is a revolution that we are in. And I have a blog post about it and a video. And they're both called functional test revolution. So on my YouTube channel, and I think this is the way you want to get started, because here I explain both how to use the browser tools, the F12 magic, functional test revolution, that's the YouTube video, and there's the blog that goes with it. And I'm exactly explaining what I think people that are now doing functional testing should do to level up their game. Okay? I think this is the first thing you want to do. And I will obviously update GoToMeeting, but in case you wonder, the audience out there, video. So get in contact with me, get Dynatrace, or just ask me questions. I'm happy to answer any type of questions. Cool. What's the recording?
Very good.